Alright, it's the Power 10, and this one's going to be a bit of a different edition. We're going to be doing a vulgar projection of power. We're not going to be talking about teams right now necessarily. We're going to be factoring in the roster mania, trying to make some assumptions and projections based on what's going to be happening over the course of the next month or so. We already have some rumors. We have some moves confirmed with Perfecto joining Virtus Pro. That one's a bit out of left field, but hey, VP made a move that makes sense. Let's see if they can waste it quickly this time, rather than spending 6 months lounging around doing sweet fuck all before benching the wrong player. Who knows? But yeah, we're going to start off actually this week's edition at number 11, which I think is going to shock some people, but I kind of had to do this. At number 11 is Faze. Currently, we know Simple is still in contract jail. That's essentially his scenario. He's not going to be able to leave and go play for Faze, so there's a bit of an awkward spot here where we're not sure what's going to happen with Faze Clan. Now, they could make a great signing in the meantime and potentially jump up the ranks, but for now, if you're telling me they have no AWPer, or they have to get some replacement level or below replacement level AWPer to fill in the shoes of Simple, I just refuse to believe in this team any more than this. 11's fair. If they had Simple, I'd probably be talking about them around number 6, potentially number 5. Instead, I'm almost unable to include them on the Power 10. At number 10 is Gamer Legion. Now, they haven't exactly made the most blockbuster signing, if rumors are to be believed, but they've moved on from an AWPer that simply wasn't working. They still have an incredible set of riflers, great calling, and one of the best coaches money can buy, but they can't really do much better than this. This seems to be their ceiling currently right now. I don't think that Kersey, the alleged AWPer they're bringing in, is going to be that big of a difference maker, and I don't see them going much further than this. They were maybe at best at times number 9 in the world, number 8 in the world with Slend. You know, they could kind of punch up with other teams getting better and their AWP change not being that groundbreaking. I do think Gamer Legion are kind of stuck here. They're not going to be doing much better, but they are still going to be a fun team. They're still going to be exciting. We're still going to get great moments out of players like Rez. We're going to get an incredible set of maps out of PR usually at any given event. He'll have some down maps, but he'll have some really great maps, and hopefully he can continue to develop and prove me wrong. If I'm wrong about this, it's mostly going to be because PR breaks his ceiling that he's currently showing us. Like, takes it from, you know, kind of good in his roles, borderline star, to genuine top 5 to 10 rifler in the world. If he breaks that ceiling, starts pushing for that sort of respect, starts demanding that respect, really, we can have a different conversation. For now, Gamer Legion just stuck at 10. At number 9, it's one of the wilder teams of the recent sort of couple months. They've 4 straight events they've played with this new roster, and their worst position was 9th to 11th. It's, of course, Furia, who signed Molodoi, Yakindar, and became, honestly, a completely different animal. Yuri was actually pretty good in the series they lost against Pain, and he's had some good moments where he's sort of leaving some space for Yakindar, but also thriving, finding lots of impactful kills. Case Rato has probably been the biggest disappointment of the non-IGL players, and still he's been pretty solid. He's had some good maps, some good moments. He's just not vintage Case Rato, where he's guaranteed to get a double. It's just the round has usually been lost by everyone else at that point. So I actually think this team shows a lot of potential, a lot of promise, and they're getting a lot out of players like Molodoi, like Yakindar, that we really didn't necessarily expect. It was no guarantee that they managed to get these things done. Some people have been questioning why I've gotten this far and not mentioned Pain. I don't have the track record on Pain. Pain, I think, probably will sit in sort of 12 to 10 range in the coming season. They'll be fun. They'll be dynamic. They'll maybe present a bit of a different problem at certain events when they show up, but I don't have the consistency of results that I do from Furia. I wasn't expecting this kind of consistency of results from Furia that I have, like, actually received, but this has been almost too good to be true. It may prove to be fool's gold, and they might start plummeting again. But for now, I'm very happy to ride with this Furia team. They've got a really talented AWPer. They've signed Yakindar and managed to bring him back to life. Fallen has been able to give up space, allow the team to play well, and not need the AWP. That's been the key criticism of him for a long time, is that he keeps AWP IGLing. He's not been that great at IGLing, and he's certainly been a terrible AWPer. Now that he's on a supportive rifle, the team can thrive. If they can get a few things right in terms of their system, their calling, bringing Molodoi potentially into the fold and using him effectively, this could be a banger squad that could even go further than this. But for now, I think I'm going to be sensible. I'm projecting a bit of a plateau from them. This is about where they should sit. At number 8, this is going to be a controversial pick, and it certainly Yeah, I certainly think there'll be some disagreement. We've had this conversation with Yumi actually on CounterStrike. Go check out the episode over on Skin Club's channel. I'll also have a link in the description and all over my Twitter and things like that. But I think G2 are actually going to be pretty good. They're making an upgrade at this coaching position, as in they're bringing, for my money, at worst, the third best coach in the scene. I think it's between him and a couple others. Like, there's not a lot of coaches who have noticeable impact time and time again. Sword does it. Bringing him in, Some Pious is a return to a solid level of AWPing. I think he's going to be better than Hades. I don't think he's going to be as good as m0NESY was, but it's an upgrade based on the most recent roster we've seen play. And then on top of that, it seems they're going to be moving Hunter into the IGL role and potentially looking for a fifth to really bring up their overall firepower, make the roles all make sense, because Snax, IGLing and playing the style he played, like not necessarily calling around him, but in terms of his actual play on the server, kind of took up some valuable lurks. Wasn't that great of an entry in terms of being self-sacrificial. I think this team's just going to get better. I still believe in Il Dottore, the Doctor, MOUZ MD. He's going to be a monster. Heavy God as well has proven himself to be basically the best player on this team. Time and time again, just consistently delivering since he's kind of got over his initial... There was a few moments initially where we saw him be a bit too nervous, too careful, rather than just abusing his incredible mechanics and understanding of what's coming at him. He's been thriving. This team should be an absolute monster. Remains to be seen who the fifth is going to be, but this is a projection of power. I don't think they can fuck it up that badly. So they're probably in the bidding wars right now for Zweih. I think they're going to end up with someone else. I don't think Zweih's going to be particularly happy about going and playing for them necessarily, just in terms of, so young, going into an international mix. It's always a tough transition. I think he'll have offers from Russian-speaking teams and go there, but G2 should look to make a solid improvement on last season coming into the next one. At number 7 and falling, and honestly, they might continue to fall after this, Aurora have been a bit of a letdown recently. We've seen sort of the expiration date on their style reached as far as being far too readable, far too predictable, far too one note. But I still think they have a lot of firepower that a lot of teams can't brag about. As far as their rifle core, they have just too many players who can win you maps single-handedly, and too many playmakers that most teams can't really handle playing against. So I think there's going to be a continued strength from this roster. They're not going to necessarily push on and become title winners, but they're still going to linger around that sort of final playoff spot. When they're playing in an 8-team playoff bracket, they're likely going to make it. If it's a 16 playoff bracket, you're going to see them in those sort of like decider group matches. They're a really strong side with incredible star power. It's just a shame they don't have many options as far as making upgrades happen or making changes. Realistically, what this team would need would be a change in the IGL slot. Maybe address some concerns you might have with Woxic on the AWP. Maybe changing out the AWPer for someone else who's like a great prodigal talent. They don't really have that option. And aside from a complete coaching and IGLing overhaul, which doesn't seem that viable given their region, I think this is about where we should expect Aurora to be. As the players fall off, potentially if Xantares' illness flares up again and he's struggling to maintain his form, you will see them crash and burn. But as long as he's one of the 5 best riflers in the world and the rest of the team are still insanely cracked, they're going to be dangerous. They're just limited in a lot of other ways that prevent them being a true threat. At number 6, this is my wildest take, I think, in this entire video. I have Na'Vi. Yes, they've been disappointing. But to be honest, most teams wish they could be as disappointing as this. They've not managed to make a top 4 run or a deep run really since Katowice, but they've been constantly challenging for playoffs despite a clearly underpowered roster. Now, it seems they're going to be making a couple changes over the course of this window, and the reason I believe in them being above Aurora, above some of these other rosters who already have all their stars, I believe in their coach and their IGL, and whoever comes through, I think will be used to the fullest. At least for 6 months. You're going to really get the most out of the fruit when you're allowing these 2 guys to squeeze them. They managed to get a major and then 3 more big event wins out of a roster of, at best, mid players at times. Bit has got that superstar potential, but aside from that, a lot of the players have been really disappointing on this roster. And despite that, they still managed to milk out a bunch of titles. So I do believe in the moves they're going to make, just because of who's going to be in charge of handling the players coming in. I think they're going to figure something out. They're going to have a great system, and they are going to adapt. and improve on last season. Now, I still think they're going to be a bit underpowered, unless they were talking like they're bringing back Simple and they're going to make additions from outside of their academy system that are actually going to be bona fide stars day one in tier 1. I don't think that's going to happen. If they did make that happen, sure, they can contest a team of the likes of Falcons, Spirit, Vitality. But given the moves they're likely to make, I still think they can be really fucking good. I think they could have an upset run to a final, that kind of event. I just don't think they're going to be kicking on and winning many things in the next season, unless Alexi B and Blade make another miracle happen, make another roster that somehow just figures it out, ticks in the right way, and can upset everyone. But that's harder to predict. At number 5, and only number 5, the Mongols. Now, they did have a major final run, and that's fantastic. Unfortunately, who they beat to make that major final kind of limits the estimation. Sure, the Faze win was magnificent. That's one of the big sort of like we've made it type of wins. Like they took down in 2 maps a team with veterans, big names, past superstars, current stars, the sort of thing that usually we've seen them in the past struggle to do. Instead, here, they took care of business, then smashed Pain. Again, not an insanely elite team, but they did smash them. And then they took a map off Vitality. So all these things are positive, and it shows that they clearly have something going for them on the stage now. They've managed to get over at least some of their problems, put to bed some of their demons. Senzu had a couple of really insane maps and moments in the grand final. Moments we need from a top playmaker on a top team. That's why they're at number 5. The problem I have is I didn't get everything I wanted. 910 still showed some inconsistencies. Mazzinho seemed a bit quiet. Techno had some great clutches, but overall we still had a lot of maps where I'm feeling like this could be just a little bit better. And it needs to be to consistently make those sorts of runs. I do think they're still a very powerful team who are going to consistently smash people in those group stages. They're going to be so sharp, so on point with their very stretched out kind of style that's going to pull you apart and punch you to death. They're going to be good. They're going to be dangerous. And if things keep trending up, they could join like a sort of top 5 block that separates itself. Because previously we've talked about, the top 4. We said after the Mongols win, they're kind of approaching the top 4. They're kind of distancing themselves from the rest of the pack behind them. If we see more of this from Senzu, we see a few more strong maps from 910, and hell, the rest of the team comes with them. All of a sudden, we've got a 5-man unit of teams trying to win titles. And that could be a lot of fun. At number 4, a team who are not likely to make any roster moves. Sure, that might benefit them one event into the season. The rest of the year, it's going to be a lot tougher. They're going to have to keep up with teams who've added more firepower, teams who've maybe figured out certain roles that were deficient before. MOUZ have a harder time in terms of making those moves. They don't make big money moves very often, and it's quite hard to identify exactly how they'd make moves to improve. The team they currently have has been incredibly effective for a long time. The core has been elite for quite a few years now. This is not a roster you can easily tweak. It was already shocking enough when they made the change, cutting Shuhei, bringing in Spinks, and that worked out only because they managed to figure out this sort of almost trio of callers to make things work with Brolan, replacing Shuhei 1-for-1 as far as the overall IGL. Torji calling his own shots and dictating a lot of the setups on CT side. Zershin at the same time, actually on CT side and T side, calling a lot of his, not necessarily calling it, but at least making a lot of very aggressive plays that give you something to work around as well. And then you've brought in a player who has this sort of cerebral edge in Spinks, where he knows how to make use of his teammates' aggressions, of his teammates' ability to hold attention. He's brilliant at sweeping in and grabbing that big multi-kill. When you're maybe even down a man, he can bring a lot of those situations back off the back of his skill and his sort of positional understanding. I think he's a very underrated player for that. So they found a great combo. If you try to make another change, would you be able to replicate that? Would you be able to still find that right mesh of minds to make a roster sort of flow as well as MOUZ has? I don't think so. So they're going to be a team who's static. We're not going to make any changes. Year on year, they do see improvement, though, from players, so there's never really any doubt that'll continue. I'm expecting Torji to keep growing into his roles. Hopefully, at some point, he'll figure out more T-side stuff. I'm expecting to continue to see Zershin to get better on stage, get better in big matches. He has improved this year. If that keeps on going, yeah, they should be able to keep up with the pack at least, who are making those big changes. It's just tough to see them really overtaking anyone and taking titles. At number 3, I have Falcons. Now, they've just made their move for Kyosuke. They're one of the teams on this list who's actually already confirmed their change. Now, this signing does come with some question marks in terms of the roles and how things are going to balance out. Can we keep Nico and Kyosuke active and happy whilst also getting something out of Tesses worth talking about? It's going to be tough. Now, they could be a team in the market for more players, especially if, I mean, I've seen some people talk about Na'Vi cutting JL and Imma. If a JL type player comes available, do Falcons make that move? I think, actually, that's a pretty great swap right there. If you can release Tessus, allow him to go be aggressive for someone else, let him be active, and bring JL in to kind of fill in some of those roles, I think you'd actually have a pretty cool team there. But to stick on point, this is what we currently have, and we don't really have any rumors suggesting any other changes. They're going to try and make it work like this. Kyosuke is an interesting player. He is incredibly sharp with his raw mechanics. His aim is outstanding, but he does have some problems when I watch the demos and I'm seeing a player who likes to move around a lot and doesn't necessarily have great anticipation of what the other team's going to do. He just reacts and frags and bangs heads. He's that kind of guy where even if he's not in the right position, if he's caught out and 2 players are swinging him and he's not really looking the right way, half flashed, he'll still get a headshot. That's what's absurd about this player. He's one of the best mechanical players I've ever watched. But he's got to make it work on a team with a bunch of players who are going to want to call their own number, and they're going to want to be active, and they're going to need him to potentially sometimes play a role and sacrifice a bit. It's a bit much to ask a player like Nico, who's had an off year, and by off year we of course mean at worst the 3rd best rifler on the fucking planet. It's a bit hard to go and ask him to set you up when he's been winning titles and you've been in the academy leagues. You've won some Russian lands with some mixed teams no one's really heard of except me. It's not the same sort of caliber. Now, I do think he's going to have at least some support to try and make it work. I know Nico's got a tendency to bring in, when a new young player comes in, to at least try to make things happen. I think there'll be an initial period where he's maybe more sacrificial to allow Kyosuke to feel comfortable. But we'll see how that actually delivers. I do think they'll have some problems bedding him properly, making everyone happy, making the whole game plan work. They're going to have incredible firepower, and that's why I have them up at number 3. I'm just having some doubts about how this is all going to work out. At number 2, we do have Spirit. Yes, they're still number 2, despite the fact that they always lose the matchups. I don't care. They're about to make a change that will fix a lot of things. If you watch them lose at the major, you will have watched some of the most frustratingly weak performances from their supporting cast. And I mean everyone who's not Donk here, ever. You might be like, oh, but that Dust 2 against MOUZ, we got some performances. Yeah, Dust 2 against MOUZ, some people won some clutches, hit some shots. Did you watch the rest of the maps against MOUZ? Back to the same old. I mean, even Shiro struggling to get himself active, get himself involved. Magic's whiffing easy trades to create winnable rounds for himself. This has been a problem for Spirit for a long time. These sorts of changes feel like they've been a long time coming and that were delayed by Shanghai. Now, if they're able to make the Zweih move happen, we're talking about a different animal. This roster's all of a sudden... I actually think they could be challenging Vitality at that point, because no longer is there a liability on the roster that you kind of have to work around. No longer do you have to sort of interrupt your game plan to consistently just lean on one guy, set just one guy up. You can be far more fluid in the way Vitality are, where it's like, well, Zweih was in position to flash. FlameZ can go make the play. Throw the fucking flash. Things like that where it's not all about one guy, because you have the option to roll out another one. I think they'll have that in abundance if they do make that sort of move happen, and that's why I have them at number 2. Now, you still need to make it work. You still need to actually also confirm the roster move. They better not fuck this up and sign someone else. And if they do, they better sign someone good, because Perfecto's gone. You can't make that move happen. Good luck if you're not getting Zweih. The options do run a bit thin, but you never know what can happen. Even promoting Mokujin, I think, is a valid idea. So we'll see what Spirit actually end up doing. But if the rumors come true, if the most likely expected move comes through, this team is going to be threatening. So dangerous. They'll have the best fragger on the planet, the best raw fragger on the planet. At worst, the 3rd best AWPer, and an actual support core that can provide support. in more ways than just dying and flashing. So there'll be something to be... so there'll be a force to be reckoned with. At number 1, it's Legacy. No, of course not. It's Vitality. We all know it's Vitality. 7 straight events won. Somehow not an era. Okay. Fucking waste my time with this. Only 7 straight events, including 2 prestige wins. That's more wins and more important titles. Probably also more wins over top teams in big matches than most era teams have ever achieved in their actual active window. Just look into Luminosity. Like, they won back-to-back majors, which seems to be now the new arbitrary standard. They won maybe 6 big events that year. I think 7. This is an era. We can average it out if you want. They can spend the next 6 months only finishing top 4. Average it out. It's the Vitality era. We're in it. The major win started it. Officially, it's begun. I don't care about waiting for another 6 months or wait for another event to happen before we can confirm it. It's done. They play such a beautiful style of CS where, as I mentioned before with the Spirit idea, it's so fluid and it's so dynamic, and you can rely on everyone on this team to do everything. You can rely on Mezzy to win clutches, to open up bomb sites, FlameZ to do the same, Rops to do the same, ZywOo to do the same, Apex to do the same. You can rely on each of these pieces to throw the perfect flash when you need them to. You can expect great comms, you can expect great fluid rotations, and really strong sight hits, and an IGL who maybe doesn't get the read right every single time, but the majority of the time is on the right page. I mean, we saw one map where he got outcalled, or maybe not necessarily outcalled, but kind of outplayed by the Mongols. Next 2 absolutely slaughtered them, not just in terms of the calling, but also his fragging. His fragging was up there for 3 maps. Apex right now is just flexing on everyone. People weirdly don't want to have him in the GOAT debate for IGLs. He's been calling since, 2021 maybe? Or 2020, whenever Alex leaves Vitality, and has racked up an incredible amount of silverware across multiple iterations of Vitality's rosters. It's not always been international. He's been just dominating the scene since becoming an IGL. Now, having ZywOo does help, but it doesn't guarantee anything. As many of us have seen with past teams with great players, just having a great player isn't enough. You need everything to work. Apex is a key part of that. Great fragging, great nade usage, great calling. He's doing everything. Now, of course, ZywOo still probably on pace for number 1 in the world. Depends on how Spirit play next season. If Spirit are able to get Donk to more grand finals, and in those grand finals he's able to put up huge numbers again, I think the conversation opens back up, because what's really been limiting that conversation has been Donk not playing the big games. ZywOo has played the big games this year. He's played very well in the big games, and he's done it in a variety of ways. The problem is, Donk has technically played statistically better, so we'll see if he can actually make those stats worth a bit more next season. The addition of Rops was going to be a slam dunk every time. I think it's going to continue. I don't think they're going to win every event straight to finish off the year. I do think they're going to win, I'm going to say about 40% of what remains, lose a few grand finals, probably never miss out on playoffs for the entire calendar year, and this will go down as the best year a team has ever played in CounterStrike. I think it will. It's going to be a conversation. I'm sure it'll be a topic for debate, but I think this will be the best team we've ever seen, at least for a year. This will be the best year teams ever played. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Just because they've already got one of the most incredible streaks ever recorded, and after that, they're just going to pile on. All right, leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts about these teams, about where you'd have placed them. I think the real conversation happens towards the bottom end in terms of who you'd include in the top 10, who you wouldn't. Where would you like to place Faze, just based on these rumors? I know I've seen Simple on Twitter say that he doesn't actually... he's not actually going to be playing with Faze anytime soon, at least, just because of the contract situation. Come what may. Yeah. Sub for more. Remember, members get access to a bunch of bonus stuff and rights, etc. And yeah, it's also a great way to support the channel. So please become a member if you'd like to. All right, we'll see you next time.